Hey everybody, this is Carl Smith. This is an intro to Austin Abstract Artist Podcast number 8 with local iconic Austin artist Jim Franklin, who has been a patron of my work. It's an honor to have him be interested in my work. He's an amazing artist, very skilled at many different styles of art making. And yeah, if you don't know who Jim Franklin is, please Google him. He's an important part of Austin art. I don't really, know what to say, except for it's an honor to have him on the podcast. And I'm going to keep this intro short because he says it all. I don't really, talk much. I mean, he's got a lot to say. He's an important artist, and he's, skilled and talented, and he does, I didn't really have to do much. He just kind of, he talked a lot about a bunch of his history, and so I'm just incredibly stoked that he did it, and I hope you enjoy it, and I'm gonna try to get out of the way. So again, thanks for listening, and here we go. Austin Abstract Artist Podcast number 8 with Jim Franklin. I'm not going to do an outro. I just start recording when I record with these artists, so we just break into conversation and he goes for it, and it's unedited and raw. It's be prepared. It's over an hour. I think it might be an hour 30 or something, but it's worth it. It's worth it if you're interested in art, if you're interested in Austin, if you're interested in music. Check it out. Bye.
I've got one to do. I've got to have it done by Friday. Really, I've got to get started on it. It's not a deadline, but it's one of. Oh, well, this is just audio, so I'm not sitting in front of a camera.
No, God, no. No one wants to see my ugly face. So who are you doing that for? The portrait?
It was for the one I'm doing now is for my patron, Perry Lorenz.
Awesome.
Who is also backing this film about me that is just beginning to get started, and I think Herod Blank is going to be involved in it too.
Okay, is it a documentary about you?
Yeah.
Oh, just about you?
Yeah.
Oh, fuck, that's awesome.
And then of course it touches all the stuff I've been involved in too.
You've never done anything like that, huh?
Not of no.
Okay.
I've done interviews for films about other people.
Yeah.
Which they snip out just a little bit,
Yeah.
I did like an hour, it seemed like, of footage for Rocky Erickson film. Lee Daniel is the one that is the main, and on two films that he was involved in, I did extensive interviews, and they only use like little bits.
They do whatever they want with that stuff.
With this Doug Sahm, big Doug Sahm film that Joe Nick Potosky directed, actually accumulated clips from, he assembled a bunch of stuff, really.
Yeah.
Because Doug's not filmable anymore, being deceased.
Yeah.
But Joe Nick actually they came over to my studio in Red River and shot an interview with me.
Yeah.
And they used it in one brief clip at the end of the film during the credits, just a short clip, and I'm trying to think of something to say about Doug. I'm kind of gathering my thoughts, and so I'm on camera, and then I finally say something, and it's like. It made me look dumb. It made me look like I'm inarticulate,
right?
Or just stoned or something.
It's out of context, yeah.
And it's just they use of all the stuff they use that little clip. Come on, Joe Nick. He's writing for Eddie Wilson. He and Eddie are going to do the history of the armadillo at the Whitliff. It's going to be called Armadillo Rising. Wow. The two of them will be on stage telling the history. How can you do the history of armadillos without Jim Franklin being up there?
So did you... Go ahead.
No. Oh, is this recording now? Okay. Uh-oh.
Do you want me to edit? I can edit.
Oh no! I just didn't realize we were.
Sorry.
No, it's all right. That's all right.
So did you know Doug? Have you met him?
Oh yeah, I knew Doug for a long time.
Really?
The way I met him was in San Francisco. Houston White, who was one of the founders and principal owners of the Vulcan Gas Company.
Okay.
Had been. This was after the Vulcan had closed. He went out to San Francisco and he had a kind of a studio. He's not an artist, but he was associated with a lot of musicians, artists that had gone out there from here, like Chet Helms, who formed the Family Dog.
Okay.
Actually, and Houston had a studio right off Market Street, and it was a nice big room, you know, two nice big rooms. It was really quite nice. And the guy next door was a good painter, excellent painter. And for a period of time, Houston was storing a painting for Chet Helms, who later started doing antiques, or maybe at that same time he was doing antiques and stuff.
For storing.
And this painting that he was storing was like a 5 by 4 by 5 foot
big
Gustave Doré.
Whoa.
It was so dark, you know, the varnishes and stuff, and it was so. But it was an original Doré painting. I mean, I got to look at it, and I mean, you could barely see the subjects in it.
Yeah.
But he sold that for like $250,000 later on.
So did you do any posters, Doug Sohn posters? Sorry, I don't really. I know your posters, but I haven't seen all of them.
I did one actually when I got the Ritz Theater with my T-shirt printing buddy Bill Livingood. When we got a hold of the Ritz Theater because I'd met the owners, Elmo and Jenny Hegman.
What year is this?
That was 1975.
Okay.
They it was interesting the way I met them. I had ridden down from Tulsa with Leon Russell. That year I was painting his swimming pool.
Oh, okay.
And I guess it was 73, 74. Yeah, that was when I met and I was on 6th Street at the St. Vincent de Paul thrift store because Leon needed to pick up a change of clothes. I said, well, I want to take him where I shop, you know. And,
that is a nice thrift store.
So and Michael Tracy, who was a painter, had a studio in the middle of the block, in the next block.
Yeah.
And he saw us go in there, and he came in. I thought he was going to be harassing, bugging Leon for, I don't know what he was. But it turns out he wanted to introduce us to this elderly couple that owned the Ritz Theater. That were really hip.
Yeah.
And so we went from St. Vincent on up to their house, which was right across from the Baptist church.
Yeah.
On, you know, the new
Congress.
Baptist church. Mm-hmm. No, it's not. It's on off not Red River, but the street one over from Red River.
Is it downtown?
No, what is it? Sabine. I think it was Sabine Street.
Okay.
And in fact, Elmo was really cool. They're atheists, and they were very well read, and they were into Bob Dylan music before anyone else was.
Yeah.
I mean, these were hip people, and so
was it intended as a theater or a music venue?
The Ritz Theater.
Yeah.
Originally it was a movie theater.
Yeah.
And but they had a stage, and Elmo. Well, back in the 30s, his father had started off in Galveston at the Opera House, what was called the Opera House, when it was a vaudeville theater, and made the transition from vaudeville to movies.
Wow.
And so Elmo grew up in that, and then they moved to Austin, and he opened the Queen Theater, his father did, which was on the corner across the same block where the Paramount is, but it's across the street on the southwest corner.
All right.
Now, I don't know, I think it's southwest. It's on the where Lerner Shop was later. That was the Queen Theater, and during that time, it was short. I guess after his father closed the Queen, I don't know when his father died, but he inherited the business. And they moved down to 6th Street, and they had a theater, movie theater, and a storefront, which was a long, narrow room. And all during the early part of the 30s, they were running films in there. Yeah. And Elmo, and the Depression hit, and Elmo explained to me that, you know, if you're making something like a car, and the bottom drops out of the economy, you're out of business.
Yeah.
But if you're selling a little cardboard ticket,
yep,
you can sell it for whatever you can get.
Yeah.
To fill the room.
Yeah.
And then sell popcorn and drinks. And that's what he was doing. He
much.
made enough money with movies on at that little narrow venue.
Yeah.
That he was able to order a theater building company from Chicago to come in and build the Ritz Theater.
Wow. Which
was built in 1935, I think it was.
Crazy.
In the middle of the Depression, he was able to build a new theater.
Yeah.
And
that's what people.
And one of the things that was impressed Elmo about that was, during that early days, was Gene Autry was the biggest star in the country.
Oh yeah.
Bigger than anyone else, I think. Even, you know, the non-cowboy stars. I think he was one of the biggest of all.
Yeah.
And he appeared at the Paramount Theater.
Wow.
And place downtown was a madhouse. I mean, completely. And that impressed Elmo, but he couldn't afford a Gene Autry.
Sure.
So he got the B-grade cowboy actors, like Johnny Mac Brown and Tex Ritter and Lash LaRue and all of those guys whose movies he was showing and making his money with.
Yeah.
And so he had them start coming in and doing personal appearances.
Wow. In
a lot of cases, they were all vaudeville performers, or their sidekicks were definitely old vaudeville performers.
Yeah.
Like Max Terhune was Johnny Mac Brown's sidekick.
Wow.
And he could do ventriloquism, he could do card tricks, he could flip a card from the stage to the balcony.
Wow.
And Elmo built the only segregated balcony in a theater in Austin. The state law said you had to provide separate but equal access to blacks. The Paramount Theater was an interstate. They didn't allow blacks, period. They just didn't provide at all.
Right.
But when Elmo built the Ritz, he had it built with a separated entrance and staircase to the balcony.
Yeah.
But they were in the same room. They could watch the same movies.
Yeah.
Separate but almost equal. Anyway, Max Terhune Elmo said he could flip a playing card from the stage to the balcony.
Those are real stars.
And
those guys were talented.
He could do ventriloquism. Said this. Tex Ritter had a sidekick that wasn't quite as talented.
Yeah.
And Elmo, they had air conditioning. It was a water cooled system.
Yeah.
On the roof, and a big fan that carried on either side of the stage and the screen that blew out onto the audience. And it was kind of a little walkway with boards along it, so he could go and keep it clean.
Yeah.
So he worked his way down into that air conditioning tunnel, you might say.
Uh-huh.
And for Tex Ritter's sidekick, who was trying to do ventriloquism, but he wasn't very good.
Yeah.
And Elmo got in position, because he did shows for like 2 days, I guess they appeared, and Elmo got in position in that air conditioner, and when the guy was throwing his voice, Elmo answered him, and then completely flipped him out. It was
can't see it.
There's a voice. It's actually worked.
Yeah. Oh wow. So when were you born? I don't even know how old you are.
I was born in the dark ages of 1943.
43. Were you born? You were born in Texas?
Yeah, Galveston.
Galveston. Okay. When did? Go ahead.
St. Mary's. I think St. Mary's Hospital. John Seeley Hospital. One of those hospitals.
So
a big birthing hospital.
Oh yeah.
I was BOI. If you're born in Galveston and they write you up for anything, they'll put BOI after your name because you were born on island. BOI.
Cool. So, when did you come to Austin?
65.
Were you coming here for school or?
No, I didn't go to. I didn't go to further after high school. I actually went to San Francisco, intending to attend the Art Institute in San Francisco, and I got out there for the summer and took summer courses.
Yeah.
And then I went back to Bakersfield to stay with my aunt until the fall courses started, and I took the train up to San Francisco, and for some reason, maybe it was subconscious sabotage, I had the date wrong for registration, and I got there a day late. So I could only get evening courses.
Yeah.
Until the next semester started.
Okay.
So I took two evening courses and or one evening, I can't remember which it was, but the summer I took a drawing course and a painting course. Mm-hmm. And the painting one, the instructor came by. He was a good painter. His name was what was his name? Meeks, I think. Mm. Anyway, I started painting, and I felt a little bit awkward, painting in a room full of easels and other people painting, or trying to paint.
But you knew you could draw and stuff.
Oh, I was far in advance. I was far along. By the time I got out of high school, I could paint as well as I can paint today.
Yeah.
And so the instructor comes by the first day, and I'm working on I'm just applying paint freely, and he said, "Well, I can see you're not afraid of paint." And for the rest of the summer, he didn't stop to critique my work.
Wow.
And the last day, he said, "You probably wondered why I haven't been stopping by."
Uh-huh.
He said, "I feel like your painting problems are such that you can handle them on your own."
Nice.
So I took that hint and decided I didn't really want to paint in a room full of people. I'd rather paint in my own room.
Yeah.
And while I was at that art institute, the kitchen snack bar had a guy working there who turns out to be Dave Getz, who was the drummer for Big Brother and the Holding Company.
Wow.
And I had conversations with him all summer, and then when I went up for the fall, he was still working there, and he asked me, said, "Are you interested in getting a studio? I'm getting ready to move out of my studio." And I said, "Yeah." It was over on Buchanan Street, right off of McAllister, near Fillmore.
Oh. And
nice big store building.
Wow.
Great. And I had a friend from Berkeley that shared it with me, so we split the money. And Getz told me at that point that he and his friends were artists, but they also had a band. Mm-hmm. They didn't tell me the name. I don't know if they even were using the name Big Brother at the time.
Weird.
But it was maybe 4 or 5 years later, that they emerged as Big Brother with Janis.
Wow.
And it's interesting, crossings in history.
Yeah. Yeah, and you guys are going to end back up in Austin, changing.
I actually saw Dave Getz when they were doing a Big Brother tour. They had a girl who was really, I think they got her here, and she was doing Janis really well. She could really had it nailed.
Yeah.
And I think she went on a little tour with them. They started off in Austin on this kind of odd tour because they weren't really playing around that much, and but they were great. And I remember I reintroduced myself to Getz, and he remembered me. I was surprised that he did.
Yeah. Were you selling any paintings around this time?
in my memory, I can't remember if I ever sold anything.
Yeah.
Things that were just, they would happen.
Yeah.
The only gallery that I ever dealt with was Clean Well Lighted Place, which was Dave Hickey's first gallery.
Okay, that's in Austin.
It was in Austin,
Yeah.
and it was his. I had an exhibit up at the Castilian Dormitory building over on 24th.
In Guadalupe, yeah.
And it was a new building at the time.
Yeah.
And the guy that was doing the air conditioning repair at the Vulcan Gas Company, we had a small freestanding air conditioner in the room. He came down to work on that, and it turns out he was a journalist major from UT.
Yeah.
And he wanted to do an article about me, so he did, and then he arranged to have an exhibit at the Castilian because he was doing air conditioning stuff for them.
Like in the lobby?
No, it was on the second floor, the kind of big cafeteria dining area.
Yeah.
Nice big room with good light. So I was doing pretty good sized paintings at the time.
Yeah.
I had a studio on 6th Street that was big enough to do big stuff in, and then that was right before the Vulcan Gas Company. I can't remember if the Vulcan was going at that time or not. Anyway, yeah, I think the Vulcan got started, and that was they used the top floor of that building as my studio.
Huh.
And then at the Armadillo, when the Armadillo opened, which was about a month after the Vulcan closed.
Yeah.
Because I was involved with the forming of the Armadillo World Headquarters.
Yeah. So were you the paintings? Were they abstract? Were they landscapes? Because we're all familiar. Well, I wouldn't say most of us are familiar with your iconic, band posters and stuff. But you do a lot of different abstract paintings, a lot of stuff.
Yeah, actually, what I was doing with at that time was more of a mixed imagery. I hate to say pop art.
Yeah.
I was influenced a lot by James Rosenquist.
Okay.
But it's not like derivative.
Uh-huh.
It's just sort of. I started using. When I was in high school, my painting was progressively becoming more abstract, and then in my senior year in high school, I discovered Franz Klein. The abstract expressionists had become big news.
Yeah.
And I didn't really comprehend a lot of it. I was looking for, it's not that I ignored it. It was just I was looking for a point of reference. How am I going to comprehend this stuff? And I saw Franz Klein, and that was what opened the door for abstraction to me, because what I enjoyed, one of the things the most about painting was priming the canvases.
Yeah.
With a broad brush and white paint over on the raw canvas. The gesso, just the strokes, the brush strokes. I just loved the way that the compositions. And I also enjoyed sweeping the garage floor. Mm-hmm. And I'd sweep it with these. It was like painting on the ground. And so that the pleasure I took in those strokes was what I found that Franz Klein was doing, but he knew when to stop. It's like,
yeah,
damn! And once I saw his work, I realized that's the key.
Yeah.
Wow, he's doing what I was enjoying doing, but I couldn't adjust to it because I had a purpose.
Right.
Make the canvas white.
Yeah.
But I was really grooving on the strokes and the process of making it white.
Yeah. Is that kind of a Southwestern thing? I mean, I've seen your landscapes, and there is a lot of spaciousness. There's an openness to them, and I don't know if is that related to Texas at all, or West Texas, or because you draw, but it's not de Kooning. It's not. You're not really going. What you're saying about brushing and pacing and letting the painting not be crammed with stuff. I mean, That's so hard.
Yeah,
And that's something the abstract expressionists, I think, when they first got into it, they kind of had to learn how to.
I think if there's any painter that I could say I have a parallel with would be Richter, Gerhard Richter.
Wow.
Because he would do abstract work, and I mean before he started squeegeeing them all, and then he would do landscapes.
Yeah.
Photographic almost.
Yeah.
And the fact that he was working with both directions, I never went for absolutism. I don't think those. And that was happening with the expressionists. The abstract expressionists was, either if you're going to paint abstract, you can't use the figure.
Right.
And it was arbitrary rules. Were to me well, for a while, and I was actually starting to impose some rules on myself when I was in high school. For a period of maybe 6 months, I didn't use white.
Wow.
Just in primaries.
Yeah.
And I would, if I needed a lighter tone, I'd use yellow.
Huh.
And browns and red and blue, but I would not use white. And then when I started using white again, it was just like a whole universe opened up.
Yeah.
So when restrictions can create an opening.
Yeah, and painting, it seems like a lot of teachers make sure students don't use black. So it's like the opposite.
I learned about black from reading a little book by the time I was in junior high. The junior high library had gotten a couple of little series of painting books, artist books,
Mm-hmm.
In elementary school, that was my key to painting was drawing. Being an artist was this one book called Famous Paintings.
Yeah.
In the elementary school. In the first grade, I knew I was an artist. It was really key.
Yeah.
And I had actually done a drawing of a horse. I was really impressed with the musculature of the rump of the horse. My father used to take me down to the pony rides that go around in a circle, on the beach in Galveston.
Carousels.
My father was into he was a cowboy. He actually worked at King Ranch at one time, and he wanted to introduce me to horses.
Yeah.
So he put me up on this horse, and they'd ride around this track. It's just a big circle, and I'm terrified, clinging to the saddle.
Yeah.
And but I remember how impressed I was about the muscles of this big animal.
Defined. Yeah.
The huge rump and stuff. So first grade comes along, and I had been actually rescued by my drawing ability from I lost my drawing book. Not my drawing, a reading and writing book, which was a period that we had right after the drawing period.
Yeah.
In first grade, everything's in one room. It's just one teacher, and she just divides up the courses.
Yeah.
And she passed around poster board to each of us and to draw on, and I started this draw. And actually, I had lost my notebook the previous evening, and I was really terrified of having to confess to it.
Right.
And so the drawing period was. So I was going to do this. I drew this horse, a view from the back when the head is turning, the neck is turning, and I really captured that muscle, that whole. It wasn't a kid's drawing of a horse. It was I was doing that muscle, and the teacher comes around and says, she was so impressed. She says, "Jimmy, you just keep working on that."
Yeah.
I didn't have to confess to losing my book. It saved me, wow.
Your talent saved you.
Damn. So I felt like this is my thing.
Oh, yeah.
And the next day, I remember when I overworked it, and then she says, "No, you're going to have to, not confess." It was no big deal, but that was a very strong impression.
So your dad was a ranch hand. Was he artistically inclined at all?
No. But he did respect the fact that I was gifted, and he didn't block it or anything like that. And
Cool.
in fact, he allowed me to, like in junior high, I was the only art teacher I had, and senior high there was no art at all.
Really?
You know, we were a football high school.
You played
3A. We were big enough to qualify for an art department, but there was none.
Did you play football?
Hell no.
Hell no.
I hate football.
You hate?
I hate the way it chewed up my academic high school. It just chews it up. You know, in Europe they don't have sports in the schools. They don't have school teams.
Really?
Every town has its soccer teams,
Yeah.
but it's not part of the school system.
It's different.
It's
Yeah.
completely separate.
Yeah.
It's recreation. Education is not recreation.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
why the Europeans tend to have better informed people, because their education isn't confused
Yeah.
with this big recreation enterprise,
Yeah.
which is what it is. It's an enterprise. And they use it to raise money for the school, and they also use it as a betting system.
Sure.
The town fathers, members of the various civic clubs,
Right.
you know, the businessmen of the town.
Yeah.
They're big supporters of the school, but they're also big supporters of the football.
Sure.
And they can bet on it. Long before betting was ever illegal in any degree in Texas,
And it's
they were making bets on all of these high school football games.
Yeah, and it's big entertainment. It's Odessa. I mean,
It's fine. I think, you know, wonderful. Just don't make it part of the school system.
So, but why? That's the only reason they didn't have a art class your senior year is because.
Well, I think it was because of that was part of it. I don't think the art was considered a valuable thing. It was something you do when you retire if you're a woman.
Or you're a hobbyist. Or
You know,
yeah.
it wasn't considered serious.
Yeah.
We were a suburb of Texas City. Texas City, Lamarck were dominated by the petroleum industry.
And football.
And football was a part of all of it. And so art was just something that was considered a frivolous enterprise.
Wow.
You know, and so, but they don't seem to understand that art and sciences were listed together in the universities. Arts and science. They don't go arts and philosophy, arts and religion, arts and fluff.
Yeah, it's
arts and science. It's all considered, because art is the way you describe a scientific concept.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
It's how you deal with the creative process. There's no other way to.
Einstein is up there making drawings on the board.
Oh yeah.
Those are all drawings of letters and numbers and those little, you know, shorthands for the mathematical equations.
Yeah.
But they're all drawings.
They're
It's art. It's
yeah.
art. He's describing it on the board with lines.
And the mathematical symbols are abstractions of.
Yeah. But in Texas, that sophistication was overridden by the dominant industries. You know, and it still is.
Yeah. So you never taught college level, or you never taught painting or anything to anybody? You never taught? Yeah.
But
That's
Leon
great.
Russell, when he came to town recently for this screening of the Poem as a Naked Person film that I painted the pool in,
Yeah.
the first night he was here, he came in for the dinner at Threadgill's the night before. It was the same night of the first screening at the Zach Theater. And when I went to greet him, I hadn't spoken to him in a couple of years, and he said, "Franklin, give me a one-paragraph definition of Jackson Pollock." I said, "Pollock's thoughts came off the tip of his brush, which has been dipped in a vat of color in the back of his brain pan."
Wow.
And he said, "You should be teaching art." And for the next three days he was there, that's all he would tell me every time I'd see, every conversation was, that's my next job, is teaching.
Really? And
because I could describe things.
Yeah, and you have a specific way of drawing that's precise and unique, but still open. And we were having lunch at Threadgill's, and you were describing shading in a way that I had never seen in anyone else's art before. That just opened up a lot of how lines. I can't remember exactly, but anyway, yeah.
It's the play of light and shadow, the edging
Yeah.
of objects when you're seeing them. They all have. There's a dance between the light and the edge of the object and the space behind it.
Yeah.
And there's a phenomena of the space behind it, either depending on if it's brighter than the object or darker.
Yeah.
It gets darker right at the edge and lighter on the object right at the edge. And this is picked out by video imagery in the old, not so much with digital video, but with the old linear video.
Yeah.
The edging was very the eye sees things that way because the eye is constantly scanning back and forth.
Yeah.
And that was very pronounced in old video imagery.
I love that.
And
I hate HD.
I think you like it because it's really the element in art. You look at Dali's paintings, the realistic, and what Dali did that was so informative for me. Was that he took classical training. He learned to paint like the classical masters.
Yeah.
And then used it to create abstract situations.
Yeah.
Illogical, the way the imagination works. Mm-hmm. But he was using things of the actual world, observable objects placed in or out of context.
Yeah.
And like some of the most informative about this chiaroscuro, the play of light on the edging of objects. There was a famous painting by Dali of his wife suspended over a bay, and it's a real good example of that shading, that edging, because she looks very realistic. It's very like she's really in space.
Yeah. And
it's the way the light plays with the objects that he was taught in the classic form. Mm. So classic training. I've always said you can't really be a good abstract painter unless you are a good realistic painter. Mm. Because it's like being able to play music, Mm-hmm. Anyone can just kind of bang around on an instrument.
Yeah.
But if you really know how to, jazz doesn't come from an uninformed musician.
Yeah.
It comes from a highly developed musician.
Yeah, and if you hear someone play jazz who's trying to pass off as an experience, that you hear it right away.
Yeah.
There's no way to fake that. And in art too, I think you have to train your eye to see it. But after you look at paintings for a while, you can tell when someone's trying to do something they're not ready for.
What's happening now with a lot of this. There's so much crass painting. People who claim to, they don't know how to mix color. They just take raw color and slap it.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like having eggshells in your omelet.
Yeah. It doesn't work.
And you can pick them out, and you can, I don't know if
but
anyone.
It's ruined.
I don't know if anyone's ever learned to chew through the eggshells.
No, you gotta spit them out.
And a good example is the movie about Banksy, the exit through the gift shop.
Exit through the back door or whatever.
Yeah, exit through the gift shop. That's the name of the film. And this guy goes to Los Angeles and gets this huge warehouse and fills it full of all this. And that's the kind of art that's got the eggshells.
Is it Dr. Brainwash or whatever?
It's just it's so much paint and so much painting
and so much bullshit.
And it's all bullshit. Yeah. And so sure, anything is. What art teaches you is to be able to appreciate the composition of the visual world. Yeah. Whether it's well composed or not, you learn to appreciate what's there.
Yeah.
And so. You also develop by trying to paint images of what you're observing. You also learned to find the beauty of it. The beauty of something is what just connects you to it. You know, that's beauty isn't pretty. It's the connection with the reality you're observing.
And connection with the artist and going through their preferences to a point where they're like, this is what I like, this is who I am. And when you have that love behind it and that intention, it makes for a good image. But you've got to go through that process of picking stuff out.
You know, when I was
eliminating
in elementary school, there was this. I was telling you about this book called Famous Paintings, which was my textbook.
Yeah.
And the right hand page was a full color reproduction of a painting from. It went from the pre-Renaissance all the way up to the abstract era, and I would go through and pick out the painters that I liked. You know, I was seeking out, because there was no instruction. I was just, you know, this was my own taste that I was exploring.
Yeah.
And some painters I liked. I liked the way they handled the paint and the way they drew. And there's some others that were like some of the Dürer, you know, Albrecht Dürer.
Yeah.
You know, it was very admirable, but it was very tight.
There's a German hard-edgedness.
Yeah, it was not. It wasn't that much fun to look at. I didn't ever try to copy him.
Yeah.
But the painters I really liked were like, well, Caravaggio and Velázquez, and leading right up to the Impressionists, the Rembrandt, the ones who painted and could draw well.
Yeah.
The painting and drawing had to be together. But then there was some painters in the modern era of the Fauves. There's a guy named Raoul Dufy, a French painter, Dufy.
Okay.
Dufy, and at one point when he was part of the Fauve group with Matisse and Vlaminck and Derain, you know, they were more gutsy handling of paint.
Yeah.
And then they got into more slapdash or whatever. And Dufy's stuff just got to be total. I mean, he lost me because he didn't go back in and work on something about putting a brush stroke onto a composition. You can just leave it there on the surface, or you can go back in and work it into the composition.
Yeah.
And
or work around it, right?
Or work it in. I mean, it's like you put the paint on, and then you work it into the forms that you're rendering.
Yeah.
You know, and if you just so I always had a preference to the well worked brush stroke. And what you see in Rembrandt, I mean, and Velázquez, all those guys, they were working the paint. Yeah. They weren't just slapdash. It was you know, it had strength about it, you know.
And to me, it relates to drawing. The drawing hand has to be in that.
Yeah, it is, very definitely. You look at Rembrandt's drawings; they're as rich as his paintings.
But they're loose too. He was one of the.
And you know, interesting thing about Caravaggio, because he used the camera obscuro, we found that he didn't draw. He didn't make drawings.
He didn't need to.
He didn't need to. He was painting directly on the light that was being projected onto his canvas.
Yeah, yeah.
And then he was finishing it out with the observation of what he was, you know.
And he was composing too. I mean, he had a definite sense of how to put stuff.
But they've done X-rays of his paintings. There's no charcoal. There's no drawing underneath.
No, he doesn't.
And
he's in a hurry. He's killing.
Well, he's copying. He was tracing a projected image. He's like a lot of the poster artists in Austin were doing that. Michael Priest came in from Dallas to to come into Austin to do the poster stuff because there was no real scene where these guys were living, so they were seeing my stuff going up, and they decided they're going to move to Austin because they can do posters here.
Yeah.
And but Michael brought in the artograph, which is an illustrator's instrument.
Okay.
And you put it's an opaque projector. That will, you put the photo or something in it, and then it projects it onto the table below, onto the paper and then you have an image to trace.
Yeah.
So that means your drawing is always accurate, and
it affects the image.
It really does. You can tell whether someone is when you're doing a direct observation of a figure.
Yeah. You're
having to retrace the forms because to get them right, and you build up a real interesting drawing by retracing these forms.
Uh-huh.
And And if you're tracing it from a projection, there's no redrawing of
No.
anything. It's all outline is exactly where it is.
Yeah, and it doesn't look good.
And it just you know, and it depends on the artist of how they render it how they carry it forward.
Finishing it
And
off.
some of those the French guys, what was it? David was did all the great portraits of Napoleon and those guys. Jacques Louis David, I think was his name.
Okay.
And he used this was picked out by David Hockney in his book, what was it called, the Master's Secrets or something, where he revealed the use of the camera obscuro, in that have you seen that book?
No,
Oh man.
I didn't know about this book. No.
Oh, it's very, and a lot of people are, there's controversy about whether it's bullshit or not, but no, he's actually picked out stuff that's actually there. Caravaggio used the camera obscuro. Fortunately for me, I always thought, well, I'm not going to use, I don't use that.
Yeah.
I can draw direct.
Yeah.
Like Caravaggio.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize until Hockney's thing that Caravaggio used the camera.
Yeah.
And you can tell by especially in his compositions, it would be still life arrangements, because the field of focus on a small ensemble, it is in focus, whereas the larger figures,
Mm-hmm.
are, and Caravaggio would pose his figures and like use a dark painted background, wet with paint still wet, and he would pose the figures in a brightly lit room, say on an outdoor patio area where the sun is lighting them, and then there's a pinhole in the wall that brings the image in, and it's flipped upside down, but then they started using a lens which would flip the image back upright.
Yeah.
But it's reversed.
Uh-huh.
Right to left it's reversed, but it's been flipped from top to bottom back to the right orientation that way. But if you make a pinhole just in a window outside and put a surface you can bring the object that is being projected on the paper or whatever. You can get it a focus of what's outside the window.
Yeah.
With what's across the street. You'll see it. It's upside down, but it's imperfect. Hey, yeah, wow.
Wow.
They started learning this back in the 1400s.
Yeah. Crazy.
And once they picked up on this, a lot of the artists started using it, and they were able to get realistic images.
Yeah. Quickly.
And in fact, Caravaggio was criticized by a contemporary critic that said he's just tracing nature. He's just copying nature, which he was. He was copying painting the image that was projected on his surface.
But
and he would pose his models, and with the handle of his brush would trace the outline, get them posed the way he wanted them.
Yeah.
And then he would, with the handle of the brush, he would make that line. So those were reference outlines, so that he could repose them after they take a break.
Wow. Very interesting.
And that's the only evidence of underdrawing in his paintings, was that little surface that you could still see in these.
Wow.
And there's one painting that's the entombment. They're supposedly holding the dead body of Jesus, and they're lowering it down into the tomb or whatever.
Yeah.
And I noticed a thing about that painting that I don't think I brought it to people's attention. No one else seems to have noticed it. I've never read about it, but the figure confirms that it was opposed with the projection. The image was being projected.
Yeah.
Because the figures, they're not really holding this body.
Yeah.
The body's on a table.
Uh-huh.
And it's supposed to be in midair. They're suspending. But the guy that's got his arms around the knees, the knees are separated. And they wouldn't be separated. If he's holding that body from the legs, those knees are going to be together.
Yeah. Interesting.
And they're separated. Because he's laying on a table and the knees are separated.
Wow.
And the guy's just posing with his arm around the separated knees. Oh, interesting.
Yeah. It's kind of ruining the romance of all my romantic ideals of Caravaggio, but
yeah, it does have it's an awakening. But you know what was enriching for me about it was the fact that I was determined to be able to paint like those guys, and I learned about Vermeer. You know, I learned early on that Vermeer was doing a photographic, and what was his brilliance was using the painting the actual focus.
Yeah, right.
The actual optical effects that he was observing, and his contemporaries were using that technique to get the complex cathedral interiors, you know, really complex compositions, and getting them accurate.
Yeah.
You know, they were going, what they would paint them in focus.
Yeah.
And I remember when I first started trying to paint like those guys. I mean, I started getting it. Maybe I was into junior high, and was just kind of wondering how do you paint something that's out of focus? Because when you look at it, it's instantly in focus.
Yeah.
The periphery is out of focus, but what you're looking at is always in focus.
Yeah.
And Vermeer actually painted things that were out of focus. Because he was painting the image, and he was seeing it out of focus because it was on the table in front of him, or on the surface of his painting, out of focus.
Wow.
So he got fascinated by the way the light, the way the highlights are in from the lens. You know, there's kind of a glow on things, and there's kind of an edge. And also he started painting smaller compositions which were fit inside the box of the camera obscura that he was working on.
Did you see that documentary? There's a guy in San Antonio or something who just made a documentary where he recreated his process.
No, I haven't seen that.
I think it's the last couple of years. My wife saw it, but I didn't see it. But you were kind of taking this technique and applying it to like beer bottles and Texas boots and like.
Yeah, well, I do direct observation. I don't really trace photos, so they're all. You can see the awkwardness in some of the rendering, you know, because I was always proud of that I had that skill.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of guys that have developed that skill too. I mean, I see a lot of them, the ones that were spray painting stuff.
Sure.
Man, I'm knocked out by these guys.
Yeah.
You know, they've learned that skill. I mean, it is a skill that can be learned.
Absolutely.
You know, I learned it. I wasn't a genius. I just learned it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
By practice, by the drive to want to do it. You can go hold up an image. You don't have to project. You can project. Like I met this guy Ron English this week, who was a wall painter and graffiti. He started off as a graffitiist in Austin. Yeah. And he said he'll use a projector, and mainly to get the main elements in place, and then he'll go back and finish out. If he's looking at a photo or something, he'll eyeball it to finish it out. Mm-hmm. So the key is to get everything drawn in the right place, so that then your eye you go in and you can see how to render everything.
It's a different technique though, the spray paint.
And I also learned. I started taking. Making extended brushes with PVC pipe, PVC, lightweight PVC pipe. I cut a notch in one end and put the brush handle into the notch, and then duct tape it. Yeah. Not duct tape it, but masking tape. Yeah. And so I'd have an extended brush. It's like the atlatl was to the bow and arrow. Mm-hmm. You know, the throwing spear. It gave you an extended. Trajectory, you know, or what do you call it? What is that called? Torque, I guess you'd call it. You know, it's like using a pipe on a wrench to get the bolt undone. You know?
Well, for painting, you've got more distance.
And when you're back from it, I can draw a nice big form with this extended brush because I'm back from the wall, and I can
see it.
Yeah, and you're up against it. If your brush is right up at your fingertip, you know, you have to. It's hard to keep track of things, but if you got a longer handle, and a lot of the old mural painters would make brushes with long handles. In fact, you can buy them now. I mean, they're very expensive.
Oh yeah.
But I just go down to Home Depot and get cheap old brushes and put them in the PVC pipe. Man, I've got myself an extended.
Yeah, and
I started painting on stage when I started performing my songs and stuff. I wanted to. I had that concept of painting on stage with when I saw a symphony. I was in junior high. I think I was in. Maybe it was elementary school. It was either the 6th grade or 7th grade. They herded us up. All the school kids from Galveston County were herded up to. I don't know if it was the entire county, but we all went on a bus into Galveston and went to the Pleasure Pier.
Yeah.
Later, that was the Flagship Hotel, where they really built an ugly building on it. But originally, it was the $1 Million Pier, built during the Depression, and they had a nice theater and auditorium, and you know, so they took us. We had balconies, and I remember I was sitting in the balcony, and I guess it was the Houston Symphony performed for us, and it was to expose us to classical music, and it was really a nice field trip. And but I remember thinking, you know, it was so visually boring.
Yeah.
Nothing was happening. The only one who was really moving was the guy conducting.
Yeah.
And he had his back to us. You know? It's like, so I was imagining a big canvas across the back of the stage, and me on a ladder painting this big picture up there while he was conducting, you know, making
something.
It was like a movie.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, do a canvas. That's where I first had the idea of painting on stage with music. And finally, I finally got around to doing it.
Yeah.
And my paintings were black and white. Ella, a tribute to Franz Klein.
Right.
And they were abstractions. They were non-objective. I didn't want to start off with an object that I didn't want to be locked into anything. I wanted the painting to be as free as the music was going to be.
Yeah.
Well, actually, the music songs I was writing and doing, I was performing with really great musicians, and they were just, you know, having fun with it. But the song was actually the natural object. It was the realism of the performance, whereas the paintings were completely non-objective. And I could use the paintings in a couple of occasions. This went on for like 9 months with the Insinuators at Saxon Pub once a week. I'd do a song and a painting.
Yeah, what year? Was this recent?
89.
Oh, okay.
No, 90. Was it 98? What was it? 98, I think it was. 97, 98. So there were a couple of times when I would explain, you know, between songs, explain that, you know, people, no one really asked me what it was, because the people that were there were into music and they were accepting what I was doing, but I developed a line of information for the prospective doubters.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot more people who understand abstract music than they do abstract art.
That's true.
And so I would explain, you know, when there's words in the music, it's a song. If there's no words, it's called an instrumental.
Yeah.
And we live with instrumental music quite comfortably.
Yeah, that's an abstraction, that
and,
people can relate to.
So once there's a word, it becomes a different kind of a piece of music.
Yeah.
And same thing with the image. If it's so basically what a non-objective painting is doing is creating a word. It's not painting an object that it's identified with a word.
Yeah.
It's creating a new object, which requires a new word. It's kind of like scat singing with jazz.
Yeah. And a specific intention. And it's interesting, those abstract expressionist men and women were really interested in this thing called Gregg shorthand. I don't know if we talked about it.
No,
but before, when journalists wouldn't have the technology to like record and use typewriters or whatever, they'd have this shorthand for writing stuff down.
Oh yeah, I knew about Gregg shorthand.
It's a series of strokes, and it turns up in a lot to Klein.
Court reporters use all that.
Court reporters, yeah, but they weren't using it.
Court recorders. Those are the ones who are writing down testimony.
Yeah.
Reporters are writing it for the newspaper. There's a difference.
Okay.
Court recorders.
So yeah, I try to, if I'm executing a line that's not too long or too short, I'm trying to think about that on some level. But wow, that's really interesting. So the images or the paintings they're improvised.
Yeah,
you were improvising them. Yeah. What was the music like?
The music was basically
it wasn't
kind of like rhythm and blues. It wasn't really jazz.
Right.
The breaks in the instrumental portion of because I would do a song. And I'd write lyrics that were not typical. I just wasn't going to be locked into writing, "I love you, darling." Oh, I get so sick of "I love you, darling." Can't you sing about something else? Bob Dylan started singing about other things.
Yeah, right.
And that was the key for me about when I finally got around to writing my own song. I was writing poetry in high school. My senior year. The summer before the senior year, I went to Kansas City Art Institute to study there. My father, that was a great stroke that he let me go up there and do that for that summer.
Yeah.
And in junior high, I got to go to Lawrence, Kansas, because I placed in the Interscholastic League art competition.
Uh-huh.
In fact, I got some kind of national prize for one thing, and there was no celebration of the prizes.
Sure.
They issued it to me, but
right.
I didn't get on stage and receive it.
Right.
But I did get invited to the Midwestern Music and Art Camp in Lawrence, Kansas, at University of Kansas.
Uh-huh.
And it was amazing. For the summer, 6 weeks that summer, I went the following year. Got to go to university level with university teachers. And it was all music and art and drama.
Wow.
And no football.
Yeah.
And it would come from a school that had no art.
Right.
And the art in my junior high was, the teacher was a craftsman more than a painter, but he was very respectful of my talent and was very supportive and helped me get onto that program. My father's oldest brother lived in Topeka, so they were able to, take me up and get me set in, and they could keep an eye on me over in Lawrence, which was, maybe 50 miles away.
Yeah. What year was this?
That was 56, 57, and then the following year, 57, 58.
Okay.
And then in the high school, it was between 60 and 61, or 61. It was the summer of 61, and I graduated the following. That was before the senior year. I graduated in 62.
Okay.
And it was while I was in Kansas City that I discovered the Beat Poets.
Oh wow.
In a bookstore. It was great. Kansas City was a lot like Austin.
Yeah.
In fact, very similar in many ways. Hills, universities, artful place in the middle of Kansas wilderness, intellectual wilderness.
Every state,
kind of like Texas.
Yeah, in Austin, it's a haven.
Yeah, it's very similar.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got turned on to the Beat Poets as well as the abstract painters in New York, and. So I came back to high school with fully versed in what was happening in the modern art world.
Cool.
And the beatnik stuff was getting to become known, as a cultural quirk
movement. Yeah.
And so the first assignment on my first day of senior English, Mrs. Green was the instructor, and she said, everyone write a poem. And so I wrote free verse poem about the sense of falling. And she gathered them up and read through them, and she announced there's a poet in our class, Jim Franklin. And all the guys around me booed and hissed. Where does that come from? Where did they pick that up? How do they know that that's a signal? You know, what kind of program taught them to do that?
Yeah.
Is it they're all football programs? Is that what it was? And but so I got up, and the year before that I got into drama, so I knew how to read in front of people, and I had to act, and I was the star actor in our school.
Wow.
So here I was, reading a poem I had written. And so I got up and she had me read it to the class, and whether they were booing, here's fuck you guys.
Yeah.
Here I am.
Yeah. Fuck them, man.
And so I read it, and she loved it. So she arranged with the head of the English department for me to do a poem for every assignment for the rest of the year.
Wow.
Final exams, I got to go down to the principal's office and use the secretary's typewriter to write my final poem.
Wow.
And that was the only stroke of art that I had in high school, was that year with that, and drama.
Yeah.
Was made up for not having an art class. Well, my junior high art teacher I was so far ahead I was disrupting him so much. He got some 4x8 panels of masonite and set up, and got me paints and got me set up painting in the back of the room. Because we had some sinks back there. It was a new junior high building when we got in it, and this art room was made for crafts. I mean, it had sinks and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So he set me up in the back, and I used the deck, the counter space for my painting, and it was stayed up there. I mean, every day I would paint during the class, and
that's
he
huge.
didn't take it apart, for the rest of the day. So I was like,
I've never done 8 feet. Never done anything that big.
yeah, it was. And the first one was a copy of Manet's painting of a luncheon. And there's a guy in the foreground leaning against the table, and so I put him in the back of the table, which opened up the table for more still life. So I was playing around with the composition as well as copying a really good painter.
Yeah.
And making it my own. That was kind of it's kind of like doing you're doing the blues or playing somebody else's song. People can do a Hank Williams song, and they make it their own.
You have to learn to do that, but having that structure in place, gives you that strength.
So that was the lucky part of my 12 years of public school in Lamarck, Texas. And the rest of it was basically programming to be a petroleum engineer or a football player or both, and not anything artistic.
Yeah. Well, we've got about an hour. Is there anything happening? Like, are you still playing at the Saxon? Or do you have gigs coming up?
No, the music stuff has been sporadic. I was when there were two groups that I was performing with more regularly, the Tejana Dames, and then that led to the Insinuators, which was basically guys from the Extreme Heat band. Bruce Spellman was the singer, Neil Peterson played keyboard, Van Wilkes played guitar, Mambo John Trainer played drums, and Tom Robinson on sax and Tomas Ramirez on sax. We had two saxophones.
Wow.
It was an incredible band.
The Jazzmanian Devil.
It was amazing, and I would do my songs and would just spring them on them. We never rehearsed. I found out after 9 months, we ran for 9 months with that every week at Saxon.
Yeah.
And I found out during the 8th month that they rehearsed every week. They did the same set every week.
Wow.
But they wouldn't rehearse with me.
Yeah. Weird.
I don't know why. Maybe they didn't want to spoil the spontaneity or whatever.
Yeah.
But there were times when I felt like, and they even said something. Well, it's going too long, because they would have to do jazz, solos while I'm over at the easel.
Yeah, yeah.
In fact, at one point I said, look, when I go over to start the painting, you have Bruce come back up and y'all do your next song.
Yeah, yeah.
Instead of just making it a break, but in my song.
Yeah.
Because I would do that and then go back and finish the song repeat the chorus or something and finish the song on stage.
Yeah.
But so it was a lot of opportunity for them to stretch musically, and sometimes it was stretching too far.
Yeah.
But if they'd rehearsed with me, we could have worked all of that out. It could work. I was telling people, actually, at the end of that run was when my friend Olivier from France, who had seen me perform one 4-gig series, his first visit to Austin, when Calvin Russell had become famous in France, and he knew of Calvin from France, but he'd never seen him, and or never met him, and he decided to make his first trip to Austin. It turns out Olivier Jouin was a very, very talented guitar player, singer, and all.
Yeah.
And we met on his first night in Austin. He came down to see our performance. With Calvin had invited me to try out my thing with him.
Wow.
And very bold.
He's great.
And experimental kind of, adventuresome, He'd never seen me perform, but I described it to him once, and he said, well, let's try it out.
Yeah.
So we did.
He'll do anything.
And that was the night that Olivier made his first visit to Austin, and he saw how I was doing a painting on stage, and
wow.
Dressed in my Mr. Franklin suit.
Uh-huh.
And he was thinking how he would produce my music if he had a chance, and 5 years later he had a chance.
Wow.
And I went over to France and we did it. And he emailed me and said, if you have any prospects of being in France, we could put together some performance. And I said, can we rehearse?
Yeah.
He said, of course. I said, most musicians dream of playing Carnegie Hall. I dream of a rehearsal.
So do you have any art things coming up? Art shows or anything?
No, not really.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think maybe things may start opening up. The thing about Austin with the art, after Dave Hickey closed his Clean Well Lighted Place gallery, I felt like there was no more galleries that were really valid. There were a lot of picture places, but they weren't. And there's still there's some galleries that show some pretty good stuff. Yeah.
It's hard for them to stay in business too.
It is. It really is. Especially if their stuff is really inventive. But there's process abstraction, and you see a lot of that.
Abstraction's easy.
Yeah, there's a lot of people decorating their condos with these things.
Horrible.
And just because they're uninformed, and they'll go to the gallery. People with some money, and they'll go to a gallery. There's a couple of galleries in town that cater to, and they'll have some pretty good stuff. But a lot of it, to me, is consciously like pretentious abstraction. Well skilled and whatever. They've studied art. They learn. But no one. I don't know. It's just not really exciting to me.
No.
And your stuff is more exciting to me because it's. You're tapping into all the abstractions that fed my abstractions.
Thanks.
The painters like de Kooning and Klein and even Jackson Pollock. Because and those were our teachers basically. They showed us the way to paint. Without having to be stuck with painting objects. Yeah, it's called non-objective for that reason. There's not a picture of an object; it's a picture of a paint.
Yeah, it's also a picture of the creative process and making that the act of creation central to the content of the paintings.
That's the point of it, and it's like jazz is that. I mean, I prefer. I don't really listen to jazz.
Yeah.
Although you know, when Ornette Coleman started releasing his albums, his stuff was really free jazz. Basically, in fact, he had one album called Free Jazz.
Yeah, that's
with a Jackson Pollock cover on it.
That's right.
You know,
and that are you familiar with that album? It's like
a
giant group, and it's
damn right. I mean, I had that when I was in high school. It was like I'd bring friends over from high school and play it for them, and they just couldn't figure out what was wrong with me.
But you were you were hearing it though.
Oh man! And then that led to when I heard Ravi Shankar.
Sure. Damn,
it was the same. You know, it was like pure creative, you know, art. I mean, there were people who were making songs that were, you know, the one person who was passed himself as a jazz man and all of that was Frank Sinatra.
Oh yeah.
And he was doing the most irpy, mediocre, middle class, you know, pretending to be rich.
Right.
His stuff is to make, and there's no Negro in it, no rhythm, no beat. There's no groove in a Sinatra. It was forbidden.
Sure. A little bit of singing, but no.
It was all crooning and that kind of, but there was no hint that there's African in there. And then rock and roll came along, and the blues was always there, because the black people had their music. That's the only thing they had that the white people couldn't suppress.
Yeah.
And white people liked it.
Yeah.
These guys can really sing. They can dance. They can do all that. Boy, they're real natural entertainers.
Yeah.
For being monkeys, you know.
Yeah.
It's astonishing how warped the humans can be about other humans.
Yeah. It is astonishing.
And I think it goes right back to religion. Religion's what separates people, makes people think they're superior to other people.
You're an atheist?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
There are no deities.
Okay.
I don't give it any. Most people will say, well, you can't say absolutely that there's. I can say, yeah, it doesn't make sense. If it doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense. It's not going to make sense because it doesn't make sense. You know, once something is dead, it's not coming back to life. It is dead. That's the definition of dead. You know, get over it. That is what it is. You know, don't accommodate fantasy. Fantasy's wonderful if you're doing art.
Yes.
It's fine when you're doing art, but when it comes down to real life stuff, there's where it becomes dangerous. And that's how the industries get away with raping the world, because they've got all these customers out there thinking that they're going to heaven afterward. They look at the pit that they've dug in the ground to give them their little petroleum so they can drive around and pretend to be rich. They play Sinatra, so his music makes you think you're rich. Come fly with me, you know, all this kind of crap, you know.
He sucks. Yeah, I hate the over.
You know, I was on my way over here, and there was this wonderful blues album of Lightnin' Hopkins and Sonny Terry. They did a record together. It was the last year I was in high school it came out. And I finally downloaded it. Get on YouTube and get it. It is, and now Sonny Terry and Brownie McGhee. Sonny Terry was cool, but Sonny Terry was sang more like a white guy, whereas Lightnin' was Lightnin'. I mean, and Sonny Terry's harmonica was the perfect fit for Lightnin' Hopkins, and this was a beautiful album. And this one song that I was playing on the way over here, I actually played it twice because I'd forgotten about it. Sonny Terry starts off and he says, "Junior," he's calling Lightnin' Junior. He said, "Junior, give me something to help poor Sonny Terry see." And he says, "You know, when I come to your house, Junior, I'm going to take all your women and take them back home with me." You know. And then Lightning comes on and he's saying, I'm going to do what I can to help you see. You know, give you something to help you see. I've got two good eyes, but I'll give you one of them. That way we both can see. You know, this is some really soulful dialogue between them, and I think it's invented. I think there's a, you know, it's just a dialogue between the two.
Yeah.
And that stuff. There's not a single Sinatra song that comes anywhere near that. I mean, there's great compositions and there were great music, you know, orchestral stuff. I can appreciate all that, but somehow it leaves me stuff that's too processed. That takes an orchestra to produce it, to perform it. Too many people on stage. It loses that personal contact.
Yeah. And it's an American. I mean, we're Americans. It's an American invention, and to me, it's the most relevant. I mean, jazz and abstract expressionism, blues. It's like the best things that we've done.
And country, music, man. They took the country music. The people living out in the hills in Kentucky and those places were doing. They took Irish music. And jigs and all that stuff, and made it, made their own songs for it.
Their own.
They weren't being. It was so removed from Ireland and from England far enough to come out into its own form. That's what it is when people they learn a language and then they learn to speak the language, and then it becomes their own language.
Yeah.
And they'll have their own accent, especially if it's an adapted language.
Yeah. And you've got to have the freedom and space to do that.
And that's what happened with the Africans when they came. They were having to speak the white man's language and do the white man's culture.
Yeah.
But they did it with their own style.
Yeah.
I mean, they couldn't suppress that.
Yep.
And that was, in a way, it was very conscious of among the blacks to that was their only way of maintaining their African heritage was to They're having to be slaves and be forced into all this crap.
Yeah.
But still, the white man couldn't force them to speak the way he wanted them to.
Right.
And that's why that patois kind of African accent was maintained. Yeah. And then there were African Americans who learned to speak like white men.
Right. And
learned to sing like white men. And one of the shining examples was Nat King Cole.
Yeah.
He could sing just Mona Lisa,
sure.
Mona Lisa.
Yeah.
They have named you. It was so articulately Anglo that it was, and Ray Charles was a big admirer of Nat King Cole. He wanted to be Nat King Cole. When Ray Charles got off of heroin and started doing his later music, in a way, he kind of left me behind.
Really?
Because he started becoming more like Nat King Cole.
He wanted to be a pop star. He wanted to make money. He wanted to get away. I mean,
he had experienced all the genres.
Yeah.
He went through the whole. That's why Ray Charles is such a. I mean, I've got a perspective on him. Once I got beyond my distaste for Supper Club.
Yeah.
Crooning and that kind of stuff. Sinatra was such a taint. When I remember when I was a kid, my father had a record player, and we had some Hank Williams records. The first concert I ever saw was Hank Williams.
Really?
My father was dating my future stepmother. I was in the 2nd grade.
Yeah. And
he took my 2 sisters and my future stepmother, on a date to see the Louisiana Hayride. Oh. And it was Hank Williams, who was a big hero of mine. I already had my own radio in the 1st grade, and Hank was my favorite guy on the radio.
Wow!
In fact, I won our family's first TV by naming a song on a country station.
Huh? Crazy.
Hank Lachlan, Let Me Be the One, and I called in and named it, and we got the TV from that.
Cool.
Thanks to my attention to country music.
Yeah.
But I having my own radio, I could find. It was like having that art book in elementary school. I could find the stuff that I wanted to hear.
Yeah.
And there was stuff in Houston. There was the white channels, the pop channels that were playing the Sinatras and all that kind of stuff that just left me cold. I went to the black stations, the country stations, and then I really was in the wilderness when I was trying to figure out what the Cajun stuff was.
Oh, yeah.
You could pick that up from Louisiana. The Gulf Coast is really lucky because the radio waves travel further.
Oh.
And so we were able to pick up stuff from Louisiana much more clearly than you could, say, from Oklahoma.
Right.
And
that is some weird music.
I know. I knew what Mexican music was, and I love cumbias. In fact, my stepmother, my aunt, before my father remarried, his sisters was taking care of us while he was between marriage, and I remember going into my Aunt Viola was cooking or washing dishes, doing something in the kitchen, and I was listening to some cumbia, and I just loved that cumbia rhythm, and I just got up from the radio and went in and said, I like Mexican music better than I like. She slapped me.
What?
You ungrateful little. I couldn't understand what was that about.
Yeah.
I was so excited about this music. And what I was saying was compared to white man music, I liked the black music and I liked the country music, but the white man music, you know, the Sinatra, the established, acceptable, the stuff that later became the Lawrence Welk show and all that, you know, acceptable white man stuff.
That's horrible.
Was you know, devoid of groove.
Yeah, and creativity too. It's about making money. It's about packaging
and being a Anglo-American, you know, culture. It was promoting the American, fake American image.
Yeah.
You know, Walt Disney. I learned when I went to Spain. Was through some suggestions. I wound up in a small town on the coast of Almeria, which is on the Mediterranean coast, and there's a town that's a complete hill. The entire town is all up on this cone-shaped hill, and that is where Walt Disney was born.
Oh, really?
And they'll tell you this story there, because Walt Disney's estate has kept that suppressed. When Walt Disney started becoming famous, he sent his lawyers over to Oaxaca to get his birth papers and suppress that.
Really?
And they'll tell you that. And when Walt was 10 years old, his parents died, and the family friend was a sea captain on a merchant ship, and so he took Walt on board to be a cabin boy. And when they were in the U.S., he introduced him to the Disneys, who adopted him.
Wow.
And gave him the name Walt. But you'll look at all of his original comics where Steamboat Willie. You know, his things about being out on the sea in a steamboat, in a boat. You know, where did that come from?
Wow.
If he was really from Kansas, what's all this stuff about the boat? You know, because that's where he grew. He spent that formative time on the boat.
Wow.
And when I saw Oaxaca, it was amazing because it's Mojacar is the name, how it's spelled, Mojacar. And I could understand how when they told me that Disney was born, I realized a kid growing up in that kind of town, every step you take is either uphill or downhill or around the hill. Everything is animated. His imagination was and the way they built houses were stone houses and organic. You know, it was beautiful in every sense without being pretentiously beautiful.
And colorful,
it wasn't formal beauty like formal architecture.
Right.
It was, and so it informed the creative nerve of Walt Disney, and which he carried through his
everything.
Yeah,
but
he got real slick. He learned how to get slick because of he was required to make it in the industry of American culture.
Yeah. Wow.
It's astonishing how. Well, Sinatra is a good expression of how things have to be polished and slicked and you know processed. I don't like processed music. You know, stuff that's got too many instruments. Too many guitar solos to me are like, oh, they leave me cold. I'd rather have someone old, like poor old Lightning. I'd rather just soon hear poor Lightning striking his strings than some lickety split. Look at the acrobatics I can do. You know, I appreciate Django Reinhardt. I appreciate all that stuff immensely.
Yeah.
But it's not what I crave to listen to.
Soulful.
You know, it's like
direct.
It's like my taste in food is similar. You know, I like some basic dishes better than things that are too elaborate. You know.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna run out of battery juice. Can
Yeah,
I?
this is. Well, I think we've got a pretty damn full amount of.
Yeah.
And this is going to go online.
It's
It's like a blog. What is it?
It's a podcast. I put them on YouTube because that's the only free place. Like every fucking podcast hosting.
Do you have a video for the company?
Well, I'm just gonna film a clock or something.
Oh, film a painting. Film some painting.
If I can get the problem is using iMovie. But anyway,
that's
so
right.
if you have a podcast, you have to pay the website to host it. But YouTube, you can put it on there for free.
Okay.
So I'll put it on there. But yeah, I was gonna put this on there. Where can people find your art on the internet?
Well, I'm getting a website set up now because the guy that's helping, that's really big in getting this documentary film done about me is helping with all that stuff.
Cool.
We've actually got in the last 4 days, he's been getting it set up. Next thing, he's going to come over and show me how to operate it.
Yeah.
It's going to be on Word. What's it called?
WordPress?
Yeah, WordPress.
WordPress is a free one.
Yeah.
So Google Jim Franklin like art paintings or how?
I used to have a website on Tripod,
Uh-huh.
Which I set up myself a decade ago, and then I lost my username, and I just so I didn't go to the tediousness. I get so spaced, just using Photoshop to lay out lettering on I forget how I did this, and then I wind up with this stymied,
Yep.
like.
It's not fun for me either.
And if there's a stumble, now I do have some tech artist friends that know how to use Photoshop, and I'll call them, and
Yeah.
Stephen Austin is a good one. He knows how to do that stuff. Juke is pretty versed in computer stuff.
Okay. Well, cool. I just want to thank you for your support. You bought like 15 pieces from me. So it's an honor to know you. It's an honor to have you here talking to me. I appreciate your support of my art. It means the world to me.
Man, when I first saw your stuff,
Yeah.
I said, this he's painting like I was painting when I first discovered Kooning.
Cool.
And Klein, it was like I wasn't copying them, but it was informing how to go about it. And I said, this guy's doing it.
Oh, thanks.
And in the midst of all this stuff that's come along since, you're not, you haven't gotten into the, see, I created some traps for myself with poster art, poster imagery.
Okay.
And these other artists came along. I started using surrealism because at this time I started doing posters. It was the psychedelic era in San Francisco, and all those posters out there, which had really established rock and roll poster idiom, were doing psychedelic, the effects of a light show or psychedelic hallucination kind of stuff. But for me, what was really psychedelic was surrealism.
Yeah.
The twist of the mind around a subject that you thought you're familiar with.
Yeah.
And so I started drawing that stuff. And I think I've single-handedly created the word weird in association with Austin.
Oh, really?
Because when people saw my posters, they'd say, that's weird.
That is weird.
That's weird.
Yeah.
This is a weird image,
But you could relate to it, and there were these Texas iconic things.
Well, I learned to draw realistically. I realized when I was first starting to draw in junior high that people would, if they were watching me draw, or out painting somewhere, they would say, "What is it you're doing? What is it?"
Yeah.
And I would say, I was determined to make a clear image so that I could eliminate the question of what is it you're drawing.
Right.
And then I realized once I got command of that, I could then push it and make them do something and make them wonder, why are you drawing it?
Right.
Ask a different question.
Engaging, yeah.
Get it, into a different level. And so that's basically what this poster stuff was doing. I was creating, and then these other artists came to town because they were seeing my posters around the state in their hometowns. So they come here and they start basically getting on my wagon.
Right.
And then expecting me to continue my wagon,
right?
And I started doing these portraits of the performers.
Yeah.
And they were feeling like when I came my turn to do an armadillo pose, I had to start getting in line. I'm the guy that started it all.
Yeah.
I was doing it all solo, and then Well,
Yeah.
so the same thing I remember reading about Picasso and the Cubism. You know, he jumped off of that wagon when it started getting really slick and moving fast.
He moved on, yeah.
He moved on. He started painting these big fat figures on the beach instead of Cubism. Cubism became a trap.
Yep.
He wasn't going to let that be a trap.
Yeah, yeah.
So I realized that was an early lesson, a good lesson too. And so I started, whenever I felt like I was about to be entrapped by my own creative whim, then I could turn another direction and find something exciting.
Yeah.
Because there's always something exciting. People think, oh, that we've reached the dead end in art. No, there's no such thing.
No.
If you're following the rules and following a form, then you will find a dead end.
Sure.
Everything does go to a point, but there's so many other points.
That's not what being creative is.
We live on a ball. We don't live on a cube.
Yeah.
There's no corners on Earth.
Yeah. Well,
there are shorelines.
Yeah.
But they're not square.
So I should wrap this up. The battery's gonna run dead. Man, I can't thank
good.
you enough for doing this. This is Austin Abstract Artist Podcast number 8. Do you want to say anything else before we cut out?
Keep an eye out for the documentary film that's going to be sooner or later coming out about my stuff.
What is it called?
I'm not sure yet.
Okay.
One of the working titles is, which I got from Fats Domino, is The Piano Nailed Down.
Ah, nice.
Or maybe... that's just a working title for my memoirs, but I don't know if it'll be the title of the film.
Okay, and Google, Jim Franklin, look for that website in the future. And South by Southwest 2015, what was the movie where the pool painting was in? What was that called?
A Poem is a Naked Person.
Okay, and check that
By
out.
Les Blank and Leon Russell.
Fucking check out that movie because this painting is fucking amazing.
And it will be released, because of its Criterion will release the DVD next year. I think by next year the DVD will be out. And Janus Films is distributing the film. Okay. And it'll be in theaters before it's a DVD, so people will have a chance to see it.
Okay.
And it's been getting some really good responses because it's a real natural, cool movie. Les Blank was I described him to his son on a camera interview. I said Les Blank was an impressionist, and he would do an impression of someone's, like Lightnin' Hopkins and his surroundings.
Yeah.
It's not just his music, but it gives you the impression, the feeling of being in his world.
Cool.
So that's what's going to happen with mine, I hope.
Yeah. Well,
and
man,
then that'll lead to professorship, and maybe I'll get Leon Russell to come down and be my guest after I become a lecturer in the university art. He keeps wanting me to be an art professor.
Well, you'd be good at it. You've excelled at everything you've done. So, but don't do it unless you don't. If you don't want to do it, don't be. I hate it.
If the conditions are right, I'll do it. I don't want to be trapped into a daily routine.
Do you hear that? Fucking University of Texas. Be crazy if you were an art teacher there. You change the world. But anyway, so we're gonna wrap this up, man. Thank you.
Well, thanks for inviting me, and I'll see you soon.
See you soon.